Our next speaker is Jeffrey Bortniker. He's CEO of Maxsum Environment, and he'll be taking our next slot.
Jeff Bortniker from Environmental Assets. Everyone here is speaking about the value of biochar. Everyone here is speaking about the projects to create biochar and to create the credits. And everyone thinks that they have the right solutions and they're on the right track. So let me ask you a question. How many folks in the room are developers, want to be developers, are thinking about developers? Could you raise your hands? Are there any? All right, great. Well, the good news is you're in the right place. The bad news is you might not like what I have to say. It is wonderful to think that you want to develop a project. It is absolutely fantastic. You want to do the right thing for the environment. But unfortunately, most individuals, I'd say 3 standard deviations, 99%, have no clue of how to get there. And I don't mean that with any disrespect. I say that humbly. I've been doing this for 40 years on the environmental asset side for the last 20. But on Wall Street for 40, I've done tens upon tens upon tens of billions of dollars of transactions. And in nascent markets like this, it takes time. And everyone in this room is a pioneer and will make the mistakes that the next group won't. And the next group will make new mistakes. I could promise you in 3 years, this market will look nothing like it looks now. And if it does, we've all failed. Because right now it's broken. And why is it broken? Because we're not asking the right questions. And my speech is not about what you can do to succeed. It's more prosaic. I'm not here to pontificate on what I think you should do to succeed. No, that's not my job. My job is to tell you right now, what are your objectives and how not to screw it up. Simple. Right at you. So for developing projects, there are 2 objectives. Get your project up and running, then keep it running. They are 2 very different things. They require 2 different sets of talent. They require 2 different mindsets. The difference in financial capabilities. They're not the same. They're not even close to being the same. On the football field, you can have the smartest offensive coordinators write the same exact playbook for everybody. But some people convert and other people don't. Why don't the other people don't? They're not executing properly. And to obtain your goals, you need to execute. So you think about it this way. I have the most amazing project on paper. I have everything lined up. How can anyone say no? And when you've been doing it for 6 months, a year, year and a half, 2 years like many of us, you get very stressed and frustrated. Why doesn't the market see my value? Look at this. This is real value. You know, you're an investor. How do you not like these numbers? You're a farmer. How do you not like what biochar does for you? You're a corporate. Why don't you understand the value of my credits? I mean, look, CDRs are not red credits. They're measurable. They're scientifically measurable. They're not saying, oh, somebody's going to, cut down this forest in 3 years. Now, that's a very big distinction in how and why individuals should concentrate on the entire plan when they're looking at projects. So you have to have 2 mindsets, like I said. What do I need to do to get it up and running? What do I need to do to keep it running? I'm going to tell you, I've seen 100, 150 projects in the last 6 months. I've been doing this about 14 months. I've tried to invest in projects. I've lost a considerable amount of money with the wrong projects. And Somebody said to me last week, it's the cost of my tuition. And that's right. Like I said, I've invested in tens of billions of dollars of financial structure products. I've invested in forestry, reforestation, afforestation, terrestrial carbon sequestration, but never building an actual project. And I tell you, I've learned a shitload in the last 6 months. I really have. So my thinking is, I'm going to talk about what you need not to do to screw up, right? It's like, what am I going to do not to step on the landmines to get me to the Holy Grail? Everywhere you go on this path, there are landmines. And each landmine will send up a red flag to a potential investor and say, no, I'm not going to invest in that. No, that gives me pause. No, I'm walking away. This is wrong. And to think about why those flares go off and what they suggest has to do with everyone in this room. I will say this with, my hand on my heart. Everyone here I know has a great project and can make money. And why are you not succeeding? And to be honest, it's your fault. It's your fault because you don't know where to get the money. It's your fault because you don't know who to speak to. And it's your fault because you haven't used the assets of other people in this room. Education is the most important part. Everyone here could learn everything they need to finance and get their projects up and running. So once you hopefully find somebody like a Gecker or a Grain or any of the others that know how to introduce you to capital and introduce you to those that could finance, the biggest issue that comes up is the issue of credibility. Are you credible? Can somebody bank on you? And when you present numbers to somebody like me, and you say, hey, I'm going to produce 20,000 tons of wet biochar. I'm going to produce 45,000 credits a year. I'm going to have that up and running in 6 months. Well, no, no, and no. So have you done your homework? Have you figured out what you can actually do? And don't send the investor the absolute maximum numbers. Because if they do their homework and they say, hey, you're wrong on what this machine could put through. I've done my due diligence. It says 2,500 tons a year. You're telling me you're getting out 3,300 tons a year. Well, how? That's the red flag. Now your credibility is hurt a little more. If you say to me you could sell your biochar for $500 a ton, and you say I have a contract for that, but you have an LOI, or the best you can sell for is $250, that's a red flag. What does that say to me? You haven't done your homework. I don't know if I can trust you. If you say to me a feedstock costs you $15 a ton to buy, all right, show me where that is. I come from Missouri now, the show me state. Let me see it, because most individuals are absolutely incorrect. Unless you have a signed contract, your LOI doesn't mean anything to me. LOIs are like tissue paper. People just sign them all day. They're unbinding. You need contracts. So if you say I can absolutely get 200 tons a day delivered at $15 a ton, and you can't, what does that say to me? Right? It says you haven't done your homework, or I can't trust you. Now, you might think your numbers are absolutely correct. You might swear by them. But if you can't prove them, that's no good. A buddy of mine, a sergeant in the Marines for many, many years, used to say, trust but verify. And that's a lesson I learned the hard way in the last 6 months. I trusted what people could say. I took them at their word. And when I went to verify, it wasn't there. That's on me. I didn't do my work. These, along the lines, these are all the landmines that you can step on. I can't stand here and talk to you for 25 minutes, for an hour, for 15 minutes, or 2 hours on what you need to get your projects done. I can stand here and tell you what you need not to do. That's what I could tell you. If I were to ask, if you would ask me what is the one biggest issue that I have with the jobs that I've seen, the projects that I've seen that have come across to me, it's the credibility of the numbers. It's the background of the people that are bringing them to me. You would be surprised how many folks were driving by in Arkansas and saw some feedstock piled up and said, hey, can I have that? And they go to someone like Gray and say, I have a project. I know where to get feedstock. And you might get some investor who's a bit of a naive schmuck to listen to that. And unfortunately, that's happened more often than not. And investors, why there are so few institutional investors, when they hear that, they take a step back. And I cannot stress enough, I really can't. And like I said, I really won't stand up here and pontificate on what you need to do to get your projects done. But you have to not get wrong your numbers. You have to know what your feedstock is. Don't bring the wrong feedstock composition that you said. It doesn't matter what you bring to me as long as that's what you represent. If you say this is the feedstock and then it's up to me to figure it out, but if you say I could get the feedstock at $15 and it's only 20% wet and you can't, well, that's an issue. And it's a small, incestuous market. Right now, there are very few institutional investors. It will be years and years until you have that. And the market talks. Everybody knows everything. It's amazing how fast the negative information travels. Not the positive information. Everyone wants to keep that to themselves. But as soon as somebody could say something negative about you, they make it think that they're better than your project. Hey, I wouldn't do that until you look a little deeper. So when you say you have feedstock locked up, do you really have it locked up? And do you really have a contract? And Melissa said this is perfectly correct. If you're trying to sell a 7-year stream of credits and you have a 3-year stream of feedstock, that does you no good. It doesn't de-risk the project. In the future, people like me will take much more risk because it will be a proven market. It will be a proven methodology. But until that happens, the credibility of the market going forward is on your shoulders. Unless the people in this room develop the projects they say they could develop, then the folks like me who have been investing in environmental assets for 20 years are going to look elsewhere. And I've looked at a lot of projects, like I said, and I haven't invested in one yet. I've spent a lot of money getting people from idea to the CapEx investment side, but not to the next step. And you can figure out why. So the question, once again, I keep saying that, is what can you do not to screw it up? And I'll say it again, because I can't stress how important it is. If you don't have your figures right, you don't have the machinery right, you don't have the lease on the land site right, you will not get funded. Just won't. Not the first time. And then you go back, everyone can go back and change their numbers. And you could reassess, that's great. But if you go back to the market a second time, that's again, and you get turned away, just stop. Figure out why. If so many people here have been looking for money for years, you have to ask yourself, why? What am I missing? People like Eka and Grain, they could fill that gap as long as you have the right numbers. If you vetted yourself, and you vetted your feedstock, and you vetted your land lease, and you vetted everything else that's associated with that, folks like Grain and Eka, they will help you find capital. And when they bring them to somebody like me, I'll say, yes, this makes sense. Let's get to the next stage, and to the next stage, and to the next stage. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. It's just a matter of knowing what you're showing somebody is accurate. I shake my head, and I say to my poor wife, we're about to have our 34th anniversary maybe, of what kind of stress I go through when people tell me, here's what I could produce. And then I do a little digging, and it's like, no. And I say to them, I just don't understand. Or they think I'm that dumb that I'm just going to take what they say at face value? Well, I did, and it did cost me money, so yes, I was that dumb. I have 2 Ivy League degrees, and yes, I was that dumb. I'm not that dumb anymore. And you will find that more investors will become not dumb in the future. If I leave you with anything in my very short, laconic talk, all I could say is don't step on the landmines. Don't step on the landmines by stepping off the path of understanding what you're showing somebody. Don't step off the path onto a landmine by showing the wrong numbers that you cannot justify. When you have a project, in a structured project, and you're trying to raise 50 million, 500 million, you put out a pro forma. And if your pro forma is wrong, that's okay, as long as you can justify why it's wrong. And I know I'm probably way over, under, I really don't know. How much time do I have left?
Right on time.
I'm right on time. Oh my God. My wife says to me, the only thing I'll be right on time for is my funeral.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. Questions?
All right, good. I got my point across there.
Anybody?
All right, that makes me feel good. All right, thanks, folks.
Biochar.org appreciates the support of our sponsors, exhibitors, presenters, and attendees. We look forward to seeing you at our next conference in September 2025.